Yeah, it's all good.
Well, that's interesting. It's like a new fun challenge for the hackers.
Well, you know what they'll probably end up doing is finding ways to mimic approved devices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spoof an ID.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about that a couple weeks ago where somebody, NVIDIA or somebody was signing, they'd hacked into that, right? So they were signing things that were actually malicious, but the computer thought it was fine.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens, and certainly keep an eye on Hack 5 because they'll be the ones to take advantage of this.
There was also a couple of devices that were not on this list that needed to be approved or disapproved. One was like charging cables.
Oh, yeah.
Right. There was a few devices that it was like external monitors.
They said that even if a device was refused, it could still supply power or it could still charge even. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. But that was for the...
Welcome to IT Pro TV, your source for online IT training. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned IT pro, we've got courses to meet your needs. CompTIA, Cisco, Linux, Apple, Microsoft, security, cloud, and more. All online, all on demand. Check out our binge-worthy IT training at itpro.tv.
Hello, and thanks for joining us today for this IT Pro TV webinar. Have a question? Use the GoToWebinar question box throughout the webinar, and we will answer as many as we can at the end. You will receive a link to the recording of the webinar delivered to your inbox. Now let's get started.
Welcome in. I'm your host, Lauren Deal. We are so excited to welcome you to this webinar, but I'm not alone. As you can see, Chris Ward is with us today. Welcome in, Chris.
Hey, thank you so much for having me join you for this. I was thinking, hey, you could take this whole thing, run with it. A lot of people would be like, yes, Lauren Deal, taking us through project management. But no, it is good to be here with you.
I'm excited because this is a whole new kind of endeavor for me, but I'm already excited about it because I think this plays into a lot of different areas, but there's some changes. So what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we want to do is talk a little bit about the future of project management, and especially a lot of the questions people have been asking me online and LinkedIn and YouTube and everything like that, and even in the forums here at IT Pro TV is, hey, we've got this new 7th edition of the PMBOK that's come up, and of course you've got the PMP exams, you've got the CAPM exams. At what point is the exam going to change? At what point does that become one of the primary documents, or we would say, publications that people are going to be tested on? Because as we know, over time, the PMP and even the CAPM have slowly but surely pulled away from I don't want to say just pure coming from the PMBOK, the project management body of knowledge, to more of, hey, we're getting our questions, we're getting our some of our thoughts and methodologies from other areas, especially with the introduction of things like Agile and whether you're using a predictive Agile or hybrid type of environment. And PMI has done what they do very well over the years, and that is to listen to the project managers that are in the field, and they actually go out and they say, all right, what's happening in the industry? What are things that people should know about and should be tested on? So that way, when you have a certification like project management professional, it actually means something, and it's not the old predictive project manager. It's now, oh, this is a project manager in the 21st century, in the new millennium, and we're using all kinds of new high velocity endeavors, and whether it's in technology or whether it's in just software development, anything that you can think of. Some of the things that we're going to look at. So let's take a look at some of the things that we're going to cover in this webinar to kind of help you out on a couple of things. First off, we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening with project management. And so really what we're focusing on here is, we have things have changed, okay? There is change. I mean, if any of you have been over the past, I don't want to say 2 years, and you lived in a bubble underneath the ocean, you might not have known, Lauren, that there was this little thing called COVID-19. So a lot of people go, wow, there's a lot of change in the world, but what about the changes in this new PMBOK guide? Because together they are producing a lot of change in project management. We're also going to say, well, when does these changes to the 7th edition of the PMBOK, when does this start affecting the current exams? Well, believe it or not, we do have a date for the CAPM, which we're going to discuss. PMP, it's still off in the future. Still kind of stay tuned for that. And obviously one of your best resources is to always check out PMI.org. They are pretty good about updating that and saying, all right, we've decided, we've just made the decision, we've put the gavel down, and officially we're going to do it on this particular date. We also want to know about changes to the PMI talent triangle. This is something that came out just in the last month or so, in May of 2022. So if you are watching this in a recorded fashion going, wait a minute, that's over a year ago. May 2022 is when the changes to the talent triangle for PMI came out. Now, for those of us who are PMP certified, or if you have other certifications in PMI, you might be going, whoa, wait a minute. That affects how I get my PDUs, my professional development units. What does that mean? Well, Lauren and I are going to walk you through just a little bit of that as well. Also, project management in a post-pandemic world. This is an open-ended subject. And what we want to do is we want to invite you right now, start thinking of questions that you would like to ask myself and Lauren about, hey, what's happening in project management? Chris, what are you seeing when you're talking with other PMs, project managers out there as you do your training and as you do your consulting and doing your work out there? What are you hearing? What are you seeing? And by the way, I would appreciate maybe something you've seen that you're like, hey, Chris, have you heard about this? I am not the all-knowing wise guru of everything, and so you might have heard something. Hey, bring it up. I think the rest of everybody joining us here at the webinar would love to hear about maybe a new topic, a new thing that's coming down the pike. So we'll be talking about that. And then, of course, the important thing that we want to talk about is the updates. When is this going to happen? So, excuse me, exam update is in January of 2023 for what? The CAPM. And as you can see, the number of questions has been slightly reduced, now 150 questions with 15 unscored or the pre-test questions. They've kept that pretty much the same. So the number of scored questions is only 135 questions that we have here. It is 3 hours, and so you are given that 3 hours to, sit there and do that. Plus, just like with the PMP when they updated it back in January of 2021, where they gave you sections and you have breaks between the sections, there are 2 sections, okay, on the exam, and you get a 10-minute break in between those questions. So essentially you're going to be doing, I think it's like 75 questions, right, half of the 150, and then you get a 10-minute break. You can't go back and review those questions. You can review them before you take the break, but after that, those questions go away, and then you're going to move on to the next section. Well, who's eligible to this? Well, guess what? It's changed slightly. They do have, of course, the need for you to do this. Oop, I'm going to go back there. They do have the change of this where you do need to have the high school diploma or equivalent, and you must meet the project management education requirements. They've tweaked the verbiage there a little bit, but it's pretty much the same as what we expected and we've seen here. Now, what's on the exam? Because that's a lot of the questions that we get here as well. So take a look at this. Here are the domains that they've released. This, by the way, is from the official CAPM handbook that's available out there on PMI.org. And you can see you've got the project management fundamentals and core concepts, predictive, plan-based methodologies, agile, and then business analysis. So business analysis coming to the forefront. And you might say, wow, that wasn't something that we had on the old CAPM. It was mostly about, like, you know, what are the inputs, what are the tools and techniques, what are the knowledge areas, what are the process groups. That was kind of the thing that they had. Here, now they're starting to add a little bit of what I would probably say foundational knowledge, basic knowledge of these things. Be on the lookout for updated training, as even here at IT Pro TV, we are going to be adjusting and putting this into play for those type of things. So those are going to be the things that you need to worry about there. So then where do you get all this? I mean, number one, I want an updated version of the PMBOK, or I want to get a chance to take a look at what you're talking about, Chris. Well, those of you who keep your eyes peeled will probably have already discovered that, hey, right here on PMI's website, at least as of this morning, this is what it looks like. And we can see that the standards and publications is the section that you want to go here. And when you do that, you're going to find that under standards and publications, you are going to be able to then come down and download your own copy of the 7th edition of the PMBOK. Now, the thing that people always ask, though, is like, okay, well, that's great, Chris, but what's new? All right. We understand there's a new PMBOK. It's been out actually for quite a while. What are some of the things that, if you haven't, maybe had a chance to sit down and read it? Well, here's Chris's, I would say, handy dandy summation of what is going to be a little bit newer than what you're used to from maybe the 6th edition of the PMBOK. And there are some things that are, I'll just say it, a little crazy. It's like really a step away from what you're used to. And when I got my PMP, my original PMP was back in 2005, and I went through training classes and training in 2004, and that was the old PMBOK 2000 that I was getting tested on there. And even when they switched over to the next edition of the PMBOK, PMBOK 3rd edition, then what I noticed, hey, you still had knowledge areas, you still had process groups, you still had those things. Not anymore. That is not what the concentration is on. This reflects the full range of development approaches. So now we're also looking at predictive, which we're used to, but what about agile, adaptive, hybrid? The difference between incremental and iterative, which was always a big thing for a lot of people going, it sounds the same to me. Well, there are some differences, so we get into that. It provides an entire section devoted to tailoring the developmental approach and processes. Here's something to think about here, gang. If you take anything like a COBIT 2019, which is Control Objectives in IT Enterprise Governance, guess what? They talk about the need for tailoring. Tailoring is one of those big things that we are seeing more and more, Lauren, in not only here in project management, but we're seeing it in IT service management, enterprise governance, risk management, how to tailor things, even in the world of organizational change management. So we're seeing that even here in the PMBOK. So they are reflecting a lot of what's happening out there. Also, it expands the list of tools and techniques, but they change these. So check this out, Lauren. They're called models, methods, and artifacts.
That was my question. I'm starting to see some new terms.
Yeah.
All right, I'm paying attention.
Okay, you got that? Okay,
Yep.
So models, and we're not talking, models. We're talking about, models of how to do things. We have the methods, the actual activities, but the artifacts. This is something. Now, I know, Lauren, that you've had a chance to check out some of like our Prince 2 project management training, which of course comes from Axelos in the UK, and they're big on artifacts. And back when I got my Prince 2 certification and started getting when I was living in the UK and working in project management out there, I noticed that they use this thing called artifacts, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then sure enough, the 7th edition of the PMBOK comes out, and I'm like, well, what do you know? Yes. There it is. There are the artifacts in there. It focuses on project outcomes, which is an ITIL kind of a concept. Remember, those of you who have IT service management backgrounds, and if you've done any ITIL, whether it's the older version of ITIL, like a version 3 or 2011, or now the ITIL 4, they talk about the success of services, and services are a means of enabling value co-creation by facilitating what? Outcomes. So instead of what the old thing was, Lauren, here is that what they would used to say is like a project is a temporary endeavor that produces a unique product, service, or result. Okay. Now the thing is that it was more of a concentration, and even though they would say that, you'd notice that even in training and testing and working in projects, many people focused on the deliverable or the product. Right. And even though they said like a service or a result was something, it was kind of like, oh yeah, by the way, that's over there. Now you'll see that there is a much more clear focus on the fact that we have outcomes in addition to your standard deliverables that you've been looking for. So are you going to have a plan? Are you going to have certain, things that come out here and doing those things? Highly likely, highly possible in those type of things. So, one thing that we also notice is there's two other things on the bottom there. What are those two things on the bottom, Lauren?
That's what I was actually going to mention. Those are the two things that I wanted to highlight. There's 12 principles and 8 domains, and that is truly what popped out to me beyond the artifacts as well. So, that is a lot more than I think I expected. So yeah. What are we looking at for these? Okay, well let's take a look at each one of these. It is going to be one of the things that you're going to want to look at. Let's start off with the 12 principles. So we're going to zoom in a little bit here closer on this, thanks to our amazing production team in there, doing a fantastic job. Thanks, by the way. And so one of the things that you're going to see here is you've got these 12 principles. And, just to, kind of run through these rather quickly, you have stewardship, which is all about being a diligent, respectful, and caring steward. You've got the team, which is creating a collaborative project team, which is, very important. You need that team environment that you have in there. Then we've got stakeholders, effectively engaging with your stakeholders. That hasn't changed from previous versions of the PMBOK. We see that. Then we have value, focus on value, which again, you see that in other types of frameworks and methodologies and standards, this value creation and focusing on bringing value to the stakeholder, to the customer, to the, the person who maybe started the project in here. We have systems thinking. We need to respond to systems thinking, which is there's a big push for that in the last 10 or so years. Leadership is still there, and then there it comes again, tailoring, right? There's that magic word, tailoring, Lauren, and it's talking about, not only is every project unique, not only is every, we would say those deliverables, results are going to be unique, but so is every organization that works on projects. And so is maybe the industry that you're in. And so to tailor your things, that becomes a very important thing. In fact, we're going to see this as part of the domains as well. Then we've got quality. We've always had quality, complexity, navigating complexity. We'll talk about like the topic of VUCA, right? The volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And this is something that as project managers that we face and we fight on a day-to-day basis. So how do we handle that? What are some of the guiding principles on that? Optimizing risk, embracing adaptability and resiliency. We want to be able to do that. And of course, change. The one thing that you can always count on
something's going to change. So these are the 12, as we would see here, principles that we have here and some of the things that we're talking about. But let's talk now about the project performance domains. Now, here's the deal with project performance domains. Remember, we used to have kind of like, I kind of say like the guiding principles are kind of not, I don't want to say they replace the knowledge areas, but they're more about, as we used to kiddingly say, they're more like guidelines and actual rules, if you can quote Captain Barbossa from Pirates of the Caribbean. But the domains are almost like, well, whatever happened to the process groups? Well, you know, the initiation, the planning, the executing. Well, it's not exactly like that, but we can see that we have several of these, 8 of these domains, performance domains, that we're looking for. This is different from the ITOs from the previous editions of the PMBOK, the inputs, tools and techniques, and outputs. It's a shift from a process-based standard to one that's based on principles. The one thing about standard, everybody, is when you have a standard, you got to follow the standard. You got to dot the I's, cross the T's. Like if you're ISO, 9000, or if you're ISO 27001, you have to do what they say to be certified in that. Whereas with guidelines and with guiding principles, that allows a little bit more freedom there. So the project performance domains represent a group of related activities that are critical for the performance of your project. And so we can see them right here. Development approach life cycle, stakeholder. So not only is how do you handle stakeholder important as a guiding principle, or collaborating with stakeholders and appropriate stakeholders, you actually have a stakeholder performance domain. How well are you doing that? How well are we keeping our stakeholders satisfied? Or, as we would say, there are negative stakeholders. How do we keep the negative stakeholders at bay so they're not bringing down your project? How are we doing with that? How are we doing with our team performance? Obviously, a very large part of that. Delivery performance, measurement performance, clear understanding of the requirements and help with planning, project work, and dealing with, there it is again, that uncertainty. We live in uncertain times. We talk about the post-pandemic world of project management. If there was one thing that COVID-19 taught us, was that, hey, you know what? There are no sureties in these things. There is a little bit of uncertainty of, hey, when things might be locked down or not locked down, when certain countries would reopen or not reopen. And some did, and then they would close down. And then if you're a project manager, how do we deal with those type of things? Again, that VUCA world that we now live in has just kind of, I said, gone from an 8 on the scale to be turned up to 11. Past 10, let's go straight to 11, because that is important. Now, we talked about the tailoring process here for working here. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to select the initial development approach. So this is the first thing that we're going to be taking a look at. And so when we do this, you want to make sure, what is the development approach best suited to the endeavor? Then we're going to modify based on organizational requirements for the organization itself. Then remember, not only do you tailor based upon organization, but even within an organization, you can have multiple projects, each project being unique, right? So we need to tailor for the project. We're going to adjust based on size, criticality, and other factors. And finally, we're obviously going to want to implement ongoing improvement. We're going to want to make sure that we inspect and we adapt, and we don't just sit on our laurels and say, hey, that was an incredible, great, awesome project. That's all we have to do for the rest of our project lives. No, we want to get better at what we do. I know I want to get better. Lauren, one of the things that we talked about, with some friends of mine was what my first project looked like.
Right.
And my first project looked, let's put it this way, it was not all that great, okay? It ended over budget. It was, behind schedule. It got accomplished, however, I actually got fired immediately after that project because I didn't do so well as a project manager. But it was my first project. I was 29 years old. You know, and it was. We'll protect the names of the innocent and guilty in that one. But it was one of those things where I loved doing the work. But then I realized if I was going to continue to do this kind of thing, I needed to learn. I needed to understand project management. I needed to be, you know, number one, a better manager of people. I was good at doing my thing, but holy cow, I did not do so well otherwise.
I was just thinking, talk about a learning experience. Sometimes you need to fail forward, and any good manager is always reflecting on what happened and what could I do better later. But it sounds like this the 6th edition was very helpful, but we're moving on.
Yeah,
what do we know?
Yeah, definitely. Because you know, one of the things that a lot of people want to know is like, hey, does that mean the 6th edition is archived, sunsetted, it's gone off, you're never going to you know, see it ever again? Not exactly, especially because guess what? Up until January 2023, the CAPM is still based on the 6th edition. The PMP exam currently is still based on the 6th edition. So, okay, well, what about the 6th edition? Can I still get it? Yes, absolutely. First off, PMI members, if you're a member of PMI, you still have access to it. You can go down, literally you scroll down a little bit underneath the 7th edition, and there you go. Hey, download a free copy of the PMBOK 6th edition. Non-members can purchase as an ebook. Here's the kicker: as long as they have them in stock. So once that, basically they're not printing them anymore. It's done. It's end of life, right, for what they're looking for. But as long as they have some at PMI's warehouse, you can buy them. But just understand, eventually they will be gone. Now, stakeholders that are part of the PMI Standard Plus library thing that they've got, you have access to this. And PMI members obviously have free access. Non-members, there's monthly subscriptions that you can use on PMI Standard Plus. Well, guess what? Again, you can, available through there, you can download that for right now. And then, of course, the 6th edition, certain companies have library subscriptions from the past that they've signed with PMI. Those will be honored, and so they will still have the ability to download that particular thing. But as of March 31st, 2022, the 6th edition they started the retiring process. They started bringing it out, and now it is not going to be the main focus, obviously. PMI's like, hey, we got to move on. We got to step ahead. We're going to head off to the 7th edition. That is the new thing, the hot new sweetness, as we would say. You know, the old busted, you know, 6th edition. We're not going to use it. No. There's still some really good information, by the way, in the 6th edition, and some people still consider that to be something that they want to do. But Lauren, I know you did a little bit of investigative journalism to find out something that even I had a question about. Is there's changes to everybody, the talent triangle, which can be, you know, honestly, for those of us who have to get PDUs, the bane of our existence, because we're like, wait a minute, how many of the leadership ones do I have to get? How many of the strategic and, you know, business management ones? But so what do we need to know about the changes to the talent triangle?
Well, the nice thing, Chris, is if you have access to the 6th edition, you are probably very familiar with this triangle. And just knowing that it has to do with knowledge and skills and behaviors that go along with just being a really good manager. And so as you see, we've got the technical project management. That is something that's been tried and true. And we've got strategic business management and leadership all working together. But as you see, we're moving along over to a new triangle. Now, you're probably thinking, oh no, Chris, what are we going to have to learn? Is it completely different? We still need process groups, and we need to have good behavior and skills and that core knowledge in place. But what's different? So, Chris, what do we expect in the new triangle?
Well, I'm looking at this. We have, obviously have a names here: ways of working, power, skills, business acumen. And Lauren, I'd asked you to look into this, and she did confirm all of your PDUs, if you got them under the old method, I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, Lauren, they're just shifting over into the equal parts of the triangle, correct?
Yes, so have no fear. If you are thinking, oh my word, what happens to my PDUs? You're safe.
Yes.
So don't worry.
Yeah, and by the way, the numbers that you need to get, the percentage, stays the same. So I think they literally said, calm down, everybody. We're just changing the names to better reflect kind of what these things are.
Right, and they actually encompass these 3 terms, but over in the triangle, it's actually kind of making it a little bit more focused area and kind of broadening into ways that you're probably already thinking about. So, Chris, I'm excited about this, and maybe you can elaborate what each point means.
Okay, so tell you what, we're going to move on over here to the vertical wall, and we'll take a look at each one of these. We've got the ways of working, we've got power skills, and we have business acumen. So probably the first thing that we need to think about and consider is this. Okay, we've got the ways of working, which is going to be the very first one, and I think we're going to magically have something over here. My producer, Kathy. Yeah, there we go. Look at, she is on it.
You got a good team.
All right. So first one let's talk about is business acumen. Okay, business acumen. Business acumen is all about the benefits management and realization of what is happening in our projects. Business models and structures, competitive analysis, customer relationships and satisfaction. Now, if you look at the old term here, this was strategic and business management. Okay, so now what they're saying is, yeah, it's about that subject, but what is the skill set? I liked how Lauren said it. What is the way you do things? Well, you need business acumen, business acumen. So that's the first one. Next up, let's take a look at a little bit more that we have here on this one. I know that we should have another one here pretty soon.
I feel like if we snap our fingers.
Ready?
Ready?
There we go. Ah, look at that. I think our legs are getting pulled by our production teams. Yes, so we'll have to snap, right? Okay. Yep. Industry domain knowledge, legal and regulatory compliance, market awareness, function-specific knowledge, strategic planning, analysis, and alignment. And so one of the things that you want to think about here with these is notice you're going to need to get PDUs, right? Professional development units for courses and classes that deal with these type of things. So you're going to need maybe things like, hey, take a class on, market analysis, right? If you do market analysis, that's market awareness. And so those PDUs can qualify for this particular area of the talent triangle.
It's really nice how a lot of these key terms are fitting into things that we might have a little bit of an understanding about already.
Yeah, and that's always neat. And of course, we want to continue to get educated in the world of project management and how these work. So, all right, ready? We're going to try the snap. 1, 2, 3, snap. I guess we're just, oh, look.
Oh, there it is.
All right, see, we are working it. We're all working this out pretty good. So, by the way, everybody, this is our new Studio 4 here at IT Pro TV with the video wall, and we have the cool vertical. So, in fairness, it's probably more us that are dealing with this kind of thing. But yeah, we're working hard at it. Power skills, we've got leadership, active listening, communication, adaptability, brainstorming, coaching and mentoring, conflict management. And I think there's another set of this list of things. But if you think about it, these are the power skills, the power of the project manager. How do you get these skill sets of these and others that fall under power skills? This is going to be taking maybe a leadership course, maybe a communication course, active listening. You could do something like even a class on the ability to do motivating your team motivation. These are going to be things, I think, Lauren, that even you have, you've seen in your business. I know you've done a lot of business stuff and working with that. You've seen these, right? Well,
I think this is something that will be beneficial in your workplace, but also that actually pours into your everyday life too. Having these active listening skills and just overall leadership. These are really great soft skills to have just in life.
Okay, so all right, let's see if we have another one of here. 1, 2, 3, click.
Oh.
Yes, we do. Look, we're getting better at this. Emotional intelligence, so, being self-aware, self-control, that whole thing that we think, influence, interpersonal skills, negotiation, problem solving, and teamwork. Again, if you've already had the, we would say, the training and got PDUs in the area of what this used to be leadership, not power skills, they still qualify. So you haven't lost anything. Just next time you go into your continuing credit, the CCRS system, and go in and put in your courses, just understand that you're not going to pick leadership. You're going to go in and go, no, that's a power skills PDU, part of the talent triangle. So just be on the lookout for that. Don't get confused and go, oh no, where does this go for that? So we've talked about business acumen, power skills. What's the last one that we have? Well, 1, 2, 3, click. Hey,
ways of working.
The ways of working. We got to love this one. The ways of working, of course, were more of, one of the things that a lot of people struggled with when they looked at it and they called it technical, that as part of the technical or part of the talent triangle. And one of the things that we said in that is like, it's the technicality of project management, the how and the buttons that you push, the methods that you do, those type of things. That was what the technical aspect was all about. So it was like the technical ability of a project manager to perform a project or to help a project be successful. So with here, you can see that we've got these ways of working. You've got things like agile and the new hyper agile, which is, of course, because we're talking about things like high velocity IT and the ability to do things quicker, faster, even doing agile within maybe a 24-hour period.
Wow.
Bang, 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 there we go. We got the hyper agile here.
Now, what is hybrid?
Hybrid is, basically this is going to be something that where you take your agile and your more predictive type of thing and you kind of combine them. So you might be able to do certain agile things like maybe, things that need to be creative, things that need to be, you need a lot more wiggle room. You need to change things rapidly, do multiple iterations. But let's say part of the project is installing some infrastructure into your environment. Well, that's a fairly predictive type of thing, very templatized, very, you initiate it, you plan it, you execute it, you monitor and control it, right? You can do those type of things. Well, that's kind of the hybrid. You would do that part on the predictive side, and then maybe some of the creative stuff, you would use the agile aspects and the agile methodology. And whether that's, and remember, agile is a blanket term for many types of agile project management capabilities, things like extreme programming and Scrum and all those type of things. Well, then you can use those. Design thinking, we've got transformation, data gathering and modeling. And our lovely friend Earn Value, EVM, is still with us. Sorry, PMP test takers, if you're thinking about that. EVM is still going to be there, so our cost performance indexes, schedule performance index, the whole 9 yards. That is still here. And I think we got one more here, so 1, 2, 3. There we go. Governance, performance management, requirements management, traceability. Wow, you know what these look like? The knowledge areas.
Yes.
The things that we have. So like we said, the knowledge areas maybe aren't officially in this whole list in the PMBOK anymore, but the knowledge that was associated with those areas, that knowledge is still out there. It's still necessary. It is still a way of working in our projects. And so overall, we would say, hey, pretty cool. We're able to come in here and use the talent triangle to do our projects and or kind of analyze the way that we're going to do. Very important though for those of you who are going to be obviously trying to continue your education in project management and know where to put those PDUs. So there you go. There you have it. Just kind of a little bit of an update on the CAPM. We have a January 2023 date. We know exactly what's going to be tested upon. We're going to have some really cool things with that. But we also, learned a little bit about what the 7th edition PMBOK is. So if you guys have any questions about that, I've been spending some time prepping and getting ready for, updating some of our training here at IT Pro TV. So feel free to ask some questions on that. And Lauren, anything anything else you can think of, maybe?
Well, I think that this was such an eye-opening kind of shift for us.
Yes.
That a lot of the things we know are carrying over to the new. So
Yes.
that's very comforting to know. But we actually have a lot of questions pouring in, and we encourage you to do the same. If you have a question, make sure you're writing in on the chats, and you too could be featured on our webinar and have the chance to win a t-shirt or some swag.
Yeah, I like winning stuff. The socks really impress me. I do not have those socks, by the way. So
We'll get you a pair of socks.
Give me a pair
for
of
us.
socks? Okay.
Yeah.
I hope so. That'd be nice.
Hey, you want to open it up for some questions
Yeah,
now?
let's do it. Let's what do we got? Who we got first?
All right, well, our first question is from Brian, and Brian says, I'm studying for the CCNA. There it is.
Okay.
I'm studying for the CCNA right now, but after that, my boss wants me to do a project management certification or course. Would CompTIA Project Plus be a good starter exam for someone with little PM experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, Brian, the CompTIA Project Plus does require you to have a little bit more project management experience and knowledge. It's not that you can't go in and take the CompTIA Project Plus and learn about it. My recommendation, and right now currently it's still a great course, would be the CAPM, Certified Associate in Project Management, or do maybe an Introduction to Project Management type course. But yeah, without a doubt, CompTIA Project Plus is a great course, especially for people who do a lot of IT projects, or if you have a CompTIA kind of suite. I'm guessing that Brian probably has some like A+ and Network Plus and some of those, and now getting your CCNA, hey, you know what, kind of stay in line with that. I think that would be a definitely a legitimate one to do. However, if you're like, this is kind of new to me, I kind of think I know a little bit about project management, well then maybe check out like the CAPM, the Certified Associate in Project Management, because it is going to walk you through the basics. It is that entry-level type of certification that PMI offers. And then after that, boom, cross right over to CompTIA Project Plus. Having both of those will be very, very helpful to you. Great question, by the way, Brian.
I'm excited for Brian's future. It sounds like he's starting with the CCNA
Oh, yeah.
and he's moving on to some really, really great certifications. So Brian, make sure you check out our library. We've got so much to offer. All right, our next question is from Jeff, and Jeff says, what's the best way to keep my team engaged and agile when projects change?
Ooh.
I think change is the key word.
Yeah, there's a lot of change in this question. What's the best way to keep my team engaged? That's up one question. Agile, when projects change, that kind of adds a second level to it. One thing that I have found, Jeff, is that team engagement, whether you're predictive or agile, a lot of the same techniques and methods work in both areas. The difference is, and you kind of hit on this, is when you're in an agile environment, you're usually running sprints, could be anywhere from a week to a couple weeks. Some people now are doing, like with Hyper, they're shortening those sprints even more. And during that time, you're thinking, well, there's not a lot of time to get my team together for a team building event or motivate them. So one of the best things to do, because in an agile environment, remember, you don't really have a project manager. You have a product owner, you have an agile coach of some sort, which in the world of Scrum would be the Scrum Master, and then the rest of the team, what? You are all peers. So one of the best things you can do is I would actually add a user story every sprint on something that allows everybody to give input into, for something that could be fun or an update, or make it a side project to plan the next get together off-site, something like that, where you're actually utilizing some of the same skill sets that these people are doing, but yet it's something that they're actually going to get a benefit from. That's a really good way to keep the team engaged. Thankfully, Agile kind of lends itself to being engaged, because your teams are anywhere from 5 to 8 if you're following proper procedure, and so that's a close-knit group. So it's a little easier, whereas I've worked on projects where our whole entire team, including project team and delivery teams, were somewhere over 150 people. And so that's a little bit more difficult to kind of go, how do we keep everybody engaged? And you have to make sure you assign those team leads to kind of coordinate things together. But that's a great question. Hopefully that helps you out. Add that maybe user story in there that just says, hey, let's plan something. Everybody then contributes to it. Everybody's talking about it. And use those information radiators on the walls of your area, and maybe have, again, one on, hey, how many days until, you know, we're going to the escape room and having massive amounts of food and maybe adult beverages. I don't know, but something like that. That might be something you might want to do. Just a suggestion.
Well, Chris, I'm thinking, I know that you have utilized this with us, and I'm thinking it was very successful with us. So I encourage Jeff. Great advice. Great advice.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you, Chris. All right, our next question is from Lola, and Lola says, do I have to buy the content provided by the PM Institute, or can I submit other documentation? Great question.
Okay, so do I have to buy the content provided by PMI, or can I submit other documentation? I'm guessing you're asking about more from applying for or utilizing to study. Okay, I'm getting a yes on that. So what I would say is that the nice thing is that PMI has accredited training organizations that you can take courses from. But even here at IT Pro TV, I have a project management preparation PMP prep class, and we take information from PMI. It's still their exam. Obviously, you want to know and understand. But what a lot of people don't realize is nowadays, the PMP exam questions, the topics, the subjects come from actually about 10 books. There's 10 books out there. Not all of them are PMI books. Okay, some of them are outside of the PMI organization, but they're pulling in the best, generally accepted best practices, so they want to use that. So if you take something like, and there's books out there like Andy Crow's How to Pass the PMP Exam on Your First Try. There's other, if you're over in Europe, there's a great gentleman by the name of Oliver Lehman who has a great website that provides training and resources if you want to study for the PMP. So there are a lot of things out there. My suggestion, though, is always look at the legitimacy of the organization. Are they offering you stuff where, oh, this is free? Or if anyone ever says, oh, by the way, we have real test questions, don't do that. That's just not a good idea. Number one, they're more than likely going to just be taking your money, and somehow they got a copy of the PMP exam test pool from like 10 years ago, and then they're pretending that thing. So they're just going to take you for a ride. But yeah, there is other content out there. You don't have to just buy the PMBOK. In fact, if you just buy the PMBOK, the 6th edition, and study it, you won't pass the PMP exam. So just be careful about that. But there is a list of that, and I do believe I've got a blog out there on what those materials are. So check it out on IT Pro TV.
Well, that was my best thought, is that I've been diving into what we have on IT Pro TV, and that made me want to do this webinar with you.
Yeah.
So much great content. You just have to dig for it and do it ethically. I think that's also something we want to plug. All right, Anthony is writing in, and Anthony has a really great question, Chris, so get ready for this one.
Okay.
He says, is the market value, resume, etc., of the DASM, there it is,
right,
and PMI ACP catching up with the PMP? And what about the PMP versus the CSM?
Ooh,
a lot of letters.
Wow, well, that's the lovely thing about all of that. We call it alphabet soup when you start getting into project management. I would say, just from personal observation, and this is just personal observation, Anthony, I'm not going to say, I've done, real true market studies, but I have, watched the market. I have, connected with several people that are very actively involved in this, in, some senior leadership positions in not just the, it's the one cool thing about, again, it's PMI, but, your PMI chapter, your local chapter, when you get together with the guys and the gals there, hey, you know what? More heads, smarter people get together, and they are all out there looking at this information. I will say this, that the PMI ACP, the DASM, are starting to catch up with the PMP, but the PMP is still going to be the one that is still considered the prime, and here's why. It's because if you work in the government, or you are a project, or you're going to do a project with a government organization, at least here in the States, you need to be a PMP to be the project manager. It is a requirement as a part of those contracts. And so when you have something like that, obviously it it does give you a slight advantage because everybody's like, well, hey, I do a lot of public or versus private sector type of projects, then it makes sense to do that. Now, I would say out of the ones that are on here that that you got the PMP versus Certified Scrum Master, I'm guessing when you're talking about CSM. The thing is that I would get both, okay? I would start with PMP, and the reason why is PMP still brings you in with that predictive. It still brings that agile, especially the new one, agile hybrid. And then, yeah, if you're going to be planning to make yourself a certified Scrum Master, and you want to do that, that would be the secondary one. Scrum really is, out of most of the agile environments, probably the top one that I hear about, at least in my little world, and it's a rather big world. But that's the ones that I hear about. That's all my friends that are project managers that actually do project management day to day, besides me who does consulting and training, and that they're all talking about Certified Scrum Master is the one that they're looking for.
This is very helpful. It's just good for me to know. I'm following along with you, Anthony, so this is great knowledge in this webinar. I appreciate it.
Great question, by the way.
All right, our next question is from a YouTube user, name anonymous. And they say, is AI usage and training part of the power skills? What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I would say that with AI, artificial intelligence, for those of you who are probably, most people know that these days, but with artificial intelligence, that is definitely going to be something that is more of a power, well, it depends. Let me put it this way, it depends. It depends if you're talking about utilizing AI as part of project management, well then that's going to be much more of the ways of working. If you're talking about AI usage and training on AI usage, then yeah, it might be something that's more about your power skills, like the fact that you not only know project management, you know the area that you are doing things in. But I would say that AI is something that is rapidly becoming something that's necessary for everybody to have at least, I would say, a small bit of knowledge about. And by the way, I include myself in that. I have several friends that are in the realm of AI, and so I kind of cheat a little bit sometimes if I get a question from a client or somebody, and they're like, hey, AI, and I want to use it for data analytics and big data, blah 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 AI, and I'll be like, yeah, that's a great question, and I'm emailing somebody that's the actually teaches artificial intelligence at MIT, and saying, hey. Yes, no, what are we doing here? And I can get that information. But it has proven to me that that can be a power skill. And so I would probably agree with you that that is part of it. But if you're using AI, I think PMI would recognize that as a way of working because it's kind of a tool that you're using to make your project management skills better. That was kind of how I would view it.
That is really neat. And AI is definitely in the direction that we're moving, so it's good to hear about your answer.
Oh, and machine learning,
yes.
Robotic process automation, RPA, which is something big because, remember, a lot of project management deals with creating production and things like that, so RPA is a big part of that as well.
Very cool. All right, this is great. Our next person who wrote in is Mark, and Mark says, so can I download the PMBOK version 7 from PMI, and is it the same as the prior PMBOKs in which you have to use a password-protected access?
Yes, you are all over it like drool on a baby. Yep, that's exactly correct. You have to be a member of PMI to get it for free. Now, if you want to purchase it, they will go ahead. You can get an actual printed copy or a digital rights copy, but I believe that you are going to have to set up a password. It will be password protected. Part of the reason why, that way they can protect it and make sure that you're not going to buy one copy, Mark, and then just kind of saying, well, come to Mark's project management website and get your copy of the PMBOK. So. Not that Mark would ever do that, but that's what they're doing. So yeah, it's still password protected. That's how they're going to be doing it. Just like the 6th edition is still password protected as well. So it's not like they unlock it after a certain time.
Well, this is good to know because hopping onto PMI and trying to get this newest version, I like to know what I'm expecting. So thank you.
There you go.
All right. Well, our next question is from Kevin. And Kevin says, what career path does PMP and Linux Plus lead towards, i.e. attack, defend, technical PMI? What do you think?
Yeah, that's the... Number one, that is an area where a lot of people, especially if you're getting into a technical project manager in the world of IT or IT project managers, having that skill set is going to be super helpful. There's also, we're kind of, slipping out on the side. It's almost like I don't want to say parallel, but kind of like a side track on that is the wonderful world of DevSecOps and SecDevOps, which will be working on projects and utilizing those methodologies, utilizing those type of things. And so by having a Linux Plus, you not only have the technical know-how of like how things are working with this, but you can then lead a project team on maybe how to build a better defense. Or maybe if you're going to work and you're going to be more of the red team, you're going to be pen testing and trying to get in there and attack, how do we plan out those attacks and how do we plan out those tests on large companies? Hey, having that skill set, I would say A+, good job, gold star, the whole 9 yards.
Well, this is so helpful, and especially knowing how you can use all of your certifications to move you forward into a new realm. So
absolutely.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you so much for writing in. We love seeing all of your questions, and we love giving away swag. And so this is the time in our webinar where we're going to gift someone who wrote in. So thank you to all who participated. And Chris, don't go anywhere. Our winner is, are you ready?
I'm ready. Wait, drum.
Our winner is Anthony. Congratulations, Anthony. We are going to send you some kind of swag.
Some kind of swag.
Yeah, whether it's a t-shirt, socks, charger, or something of your choice. And so we really appreciate you joining us on this webinar today. And Chris.
Yes.
Thank you so much for everything you offered us today.
My pleasure, and just always a lot of fun working with you, Lauren, and our team, and talking about my favorite subject, which is project management. And hopefully you guys learned some things that you can use, get ready and prep. Maybe, hey, I got time before I have to take the CAPM because it's coming up in January versus October, which some people were thinking, and that gives you a little bit more of a time sense, so good for you.
Well, I'm going to be prepping alongside with Chris and you, so if you have any questions, reach out to us. But thank you so much for joining us on this webinar, and we'll see you next time.